George Sedano in for Colin. It's the Herd on ESPN Radio and ESPN U. Man, we got an action-packed show for you. David Shaw, Stanford head coach, is going to stop by. Rich Rod is going to stop by. Teddy Bruschi. Levitard and Stugotz are in Bristol. They're checking in. We got a lot of stuff going on. A lot of stuff. NFL camps are open. I've got conspiracy theories on the Dallas Cowboys. I even got some thoughts on how the Patriots will prolong Tom Brady's career. Plus, the Broncos. Do they have to change the way they go about their business? We'll get to all that coming up in just a sec, but I want to start off with Ray Rice. And I'll say this. We talked about it a lot on this network. I talked about it yesterday on SVP and Russillo when I was in with Ryan. And, look, 2-game suspension is a joke, in my opinion. It's just that simple. You can't have that. You can't sit here and equate what happened with Ray Rice and his wife, or fiance at the time, to PEDs and drug suspensions. Robert Mathis of the Indianapolis Colts got nailed a couple of games for using a fertility drug. And Ray Rice gets 2 games? Are we serious about this? It doesn't seem like the NFL is very serious about this. And maybe I'm reading too much into that, but perception is reality, folks. And if you're Roger Goodell, you can't like the reaction to this today. You can't like the perception that your league is just kind of brushing aside an incident of domestic violence. That may not be the case, but that's the way it's going to be perceived. And look, I know the other side of the coin. People are going to say, oh, Sedano, you're just being Captain Easy stance here. Well, sometimes there's only one stance. And no, I don't know what happened in that elevator. I don't. Neither do you. The only people that know are the people who saw the video, the cops, and the 2 people involved, right? For the most part. Maybe the attorneys. But you know what? It's a very simple rule, man. And I was taught it at a very young age from my dad. Hey, man, don't put your hands on a girl. It's that simple. Don't do it. And look, can guys be the victims of domestic violence? Absolutely. We saw it recently. Does everyone not remember Solange Knowles and Jay-Z in an elevator? She was wailing on him, kicking him. What did he do? The one thing he did was kind of hold her back, try to grab her and just kind of keep her away. You don't uppercut someone like you're in a video game. I mean, that's what that looked like. And look, you could say, well, you know what? A lot of these things happen, and we don't have the video to prove it. Yeah, the video is worse. It's more damning. It makes it an awful situation. It makes an awful situation even worse. But those are the realities of what we are dealing with here. And here's the other thing. If you're the NFL, and this is the one thing I don't jive with when it comes to Roger Goodell and the NFL and just kind of their punishment and the way they dole things out. There's no consistency. There's no rhyme or reason to what they're doing at times. At least that's the way, again, it's perceived. And at times, it almost feels like he's making the rules up as he goes. And you certainly don't want that perception. Ben Roethlisberger, let's go back a couple of years. He has that incident with the girl in the stall and allegedly things happen. Do you remember what happened there? Do you remember the punishment for Ben Roethlisberger? Because I do. The original punishment was 6 games. And then it was appealed down to 4. Okay. Why, if you're Roger Goodell, didn't you just decide, hey, man, let's just go 6 and let the union try to make the case for Ray Rice, or even 4, and let the union make the case for Ray Rice for 3 or 2 or whatever? Yeah, I don't understand why you wouldn't do that. You've put yourself and your brand in a position to be criticized, not just in the world of sports, but this is a story that transcended sports. This is CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, The Today Show, Good Morning America. All of them. They're all talking about TMZ. I mean, TMZ had the video. So you needed to do better here. And honestly, I don't even know if the team has handled this very well either. John Harbaugh, their head coach, had these comments yesterday at practice.
We said from the beginning that the circumstances would determine the consequences. There are consequences when you make a mistake like that. I stand behind Ray. He's a heck of a guy. He's done everything right since. He makes a mistake, all right? He's going to have to pay a consequence. I think that's good for kids to understand that it works that way. That's how it works. That's how it should be.
What? The kids? Look, I get his bigger point, which is you make a mistake and you got to pay the consequences, so kids need to learn that there are repercussions. But basically what the NFL is teaching kids in this situation, and I'm not the kids guy. I hate invoking kids in all these discussions. I hate when people say, well, athletes need to be role models for kids. No, you need to be a role model for your kid. Nobody else should. But since we're having that conversation, since we're talking about kids, you're basically telling kids, yeah, go hit your wife and you'll only get a slap on the wrist, which is what this feels like. Is that really the message we want to send? Again, that's why I hate invoking kids into these conversations. It's just silly. There's no need to. And especially when a guy got off light. Now, look, there are repercussions for everyone. I curse on the air, I say something, do something stupid on the air, I can get suspended or I can get fired. Who knows? It just depends on what happens and who's in charge and how they feel. Everyone at their job has consequences when they make mistakes. It's that simple. And here's the other thing. I'm not sitting here and saying that Ray Rice should be condemned for the history of his life. Like I'm not saying, hey, let's send him away, let's ban him from the NFL for life. No, guys make mistakes. And a lot of guys have made mistakes in the history of sports and entertainment and whatnot and in general and have rebounded from them. Right? I mean, we could go down the laundry list, right? Look at Roethlisberger. I just mentioned him. He's stayed out of trouble, right? Mike Tyson went from being incarcerated and considered one of the worst guys in sports history to being a guy that's about to win a Tony Award, practically. So he absolutely can rehabilitate himself. Guys that know Ray Rice, people that will vouch for him will say, hey, man, that's not who he is. And I think you have to take people at face value there. But he made an awful mistake, and 2 games is not enough. It's just not. Captain Easy stance or not, that's just the reality of it. And look, again, Jason Kidd went through something like this. Very similar, actually. Just wasn't on video, but he had a domestic violence issue. And he's turned out okay. He's a Hall of Fame player. And his life moved on. You can move on from these things, and hopefully Ray Rice learns and moves on. It's The Herd, presented by Progressive Insurance. All guests appear via the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. You can always hit us up on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at The Herd for the show, at Sedano ESPN for myself, Sedano ESPN. Straight ahead, the Cavs and Andrew Wiggins put pen to paper, and one player is holding out in the NFL, and that could affect the entire team's season. We span the globe next. George Sedano in for Colin. It's The Herd on ESPN Radio. All right. In your everyday life, guys, you sometimes find yourselves in a situation that makes you uncomfortable. But when you're wearing Hanes T-shirts, underwear, and socks with revolutionary X-Temp technology, you'll keep it cool. It's designed to respond to your body temperature and speed evaporation, keeping you dry and comfortable. Uncomfortable moments happen to us every day, and Hanes X-Temp technology is there for you when you find yourself in that uncomfortable type of moment. So whether you forgot to hit the mute button in that meeting or you're teaching your 16-year-old to drive, you'll keep it cool. Hanes X-Temp technology, because when you're cool, you're comfortable. We span the globe next. George Sedano in for Colin. It's The Herd on ESPN Radio. George Sedano in for Colin. It's The Herd on ESPN Radio and ESPNU. Celebrate birthdays, anniversaries, or even just because. With a smile, visit 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN for special deals on flowers and gifts starting at $29.99. You can hit us up on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at The Herd for the show, at Sedano ESPN for myself. A lot of stuff to cover, a lot of ground to cover still. Got a lot of college football stuff to get into, NFL stuff. We did a top 5 list yesterday. I did with Ryan yesterday on SVP and Russillo. That had people all out of whack. People were tweeting me even this morning. It was insane. So we'll get to that coming up in a little bit. But first, it's time to span the globe.
We do it every day at this time. We call it our daily sports page.
Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of sports.
Spanning the globe. Baltimore.
Jamison Hensley, ESPN NFL Nation Ravens reporter, joins us here. Jamison, why did Roger Goodell decide on only 2 games?
I think what it came down to, and I think many people were bracing, even with the Ravens, were bracing for 4 games. But I think 3 factors kind of weighed into it. 1, Rice's then fiance, now wife, went with him to Roger Goodell and pleaded his case. 2, Rice has been one of the big fixtures in the community here, led an anti-bullying campaign in the city. And then thirdly, immediately after the incident, Rice and his wife went into counseling. They took it upon themselves to do that. I think those 3 factors combined helped Rice go from a 4-game suspension down to 2.
Jamison, what does the suspension mean for future assault cases in the league?
Well, I think what many people are angered, and rightfully so, that this was a light suspension, but I think it only falls in line with what the NFL has done previously. This case obviously has gained a lot more national traction because of the video on TMZ and the stature of a Ray Rice, a star player in this league. But you look at all the domestic violence cases in the NFL, most of these players are getting 1, 2, 3 games. They're not getting 6 games, 8 games for a first-time violation. So until the NFL changes that, this is going to continue to be their track record.
And lastly, how does this affect them from a football perspective for those couple of games?
Yeah, the top option is Bernard Pierce. He's been their backup for the past couple of years. Looked very good during the Ravens Super Bowl run. Was actually one of the key kind of role players for the Ravens. Last year, struggled like a lot of the Ravens offensively. Only averaged 2.9 yards per carry. He had off-season shoulder surgery. He's just coming back now. He looks good, but the Ravens are banking on him to be their primary back for those first 2 games against the Cincinnati Bengals and Pittsburgh Steelers.
Jamison Hensley, Ray Rice gets a 2-game suspension. ESPN NFL Nation's Ravens reporter. Thanks, Jamison.
Thank you.
Cleveland.
Mark Stein, ESPN senior NBA writer. Cavs sign Andrew Wiggins to a 4-year deal. All right, Mark, the Cavs, they can't trade Wiggins for 30 days, but what happens to the Kevin Love trade now?
Everyone's going to keep talking. The Cavs, the Wolves, the Wolves can come to a verbal agreement with the Cavs. They just can't announce it or acknowledge it for 30 days. And what gives the Cavs a little bit of comfort here, Chicago is their main threat right now, the team best positioned to trump them in the Kevin Love sweepstakes. But Chicago's got the same issue. They can't trade Doug McDermott for 27, 28 days. They can't trade Mirotic for 20-plus days because those guys both just signed as well, and realistically they can't get a deal done unless they include one or both of those guys with Taj Gibson. So the 2 teams at the forefront of the Kevin Love hunt both have to wait right now. Can Golden State jump back in if they suddenly decide, okay, we will trade Klay Thompson? Conceivably, yes, but there's been no indication that Golden State's ready to do that.
So we could have a deal in principle, and it could be reported. It just can't be official. That's it.
Right. We'll have, everyone will deny it. You can get no acknowledgement from the teams because they're just not allowed to say that. But you have to think, the Wolves and the Cavs have proceeded here with the understanding that Wiggins was going to be signed. This is not a surprise to anyone who's in the middle of this.
Were you surprised the Bulls went after him?
No, because I think they heard her. We've been saying since May that Chicago is the place that Kevin Love wants to end up. And, he has so much say here because he can be a free agent in 2015. So if you're a team that Kevin Love wants to end up with, I think you owe it to yourselves to explore it. It does make a little less sense now that they've signed Pau Gasol, they brought Mirotic over, and they don't have as many trade assets as they did in June, let's say. But I think Chicago's also looking at it from the perspective of, do we really want to see Kevin Love end up in Cleveland in our division, let alone our conference? Because if Cleveland gets Kevin Love, they are going to be a handful. They're a handful already. They become the instant favorite in the East if they get Kevin Love.
If you're Dan Gilbert, you just got to do it because that's what LeBron wants. Lastly here, Chris Paul talking about a boycott if Donald Sterling is still the owner. What's the likelihood of Donald Sterling even being the owner at that point?
I wish I had the legal chops to tell you. I mean, let's be honest. He's taken this farther than a lot of people thought. How many times have we thought this saga was over or near the end? But I started out covering the NBA as a Clippers beat writer. I know Donald Sterling. He is a litigious man who has spent the bulk of his life in courts, and I can't say that I'm surprised that he's managed to drag this thing out. Most people around the league do think it's going to be settled by the time camp starts, but, Donald Sterling, unfortunately, in a courtroom is pretty resilient.
He's Mark Stein, ESPN senior NBA writer. Thanks, Mark.
You got it.
Seattle.
Marshawn Lynch expected to hold out. Terry Blunt, ESPN, NFL Nation, Seahawks reporter. All right, Terry, what kind of contract is Lynch looking for?
Well, Lynch still has 2 years left on a $30 million deal, George. But what he wants out of this is more money in 2014. He wants some of the 2015 money up front this season because he realizes there's a good possibility that he could be a salary cap casualty and not get his money in 2015 and not be here in 2015. So consequently, he wants more money up front this season. He doesn't really want to break the bank from what I've been told. He wants about $2 million more up front this season. But I also don't believe the Seahawks are inclined to give it to him. He's paid among the top 5 running backs in the league now, and it's going to be a wait-and-see situation.
It's pretty interesting because I think he's basically the straw that stirs the drink with them on offense. I think that Russell Wilson and those guys could be exposed a little bit, kind of like what Kansas City just went through with Jamal Charles. You'd think they'd want a quick resolution, so you don't think that'll be the case?
I really don't think so. I know that every indication, George, in the offseason is they were preparing themselves to move on. Earlier, back in May even, their offensive coordinator, Darrell Bevel, said they will have a running back by committee this season. He backed off that statement a little later, but they're really looking to move on with last year's second-round pick, Christian Michael, who is an incredibly talented young back. They're very high on his backup, Robert Turbin. They believe they could move on. Now, they don't want to. They do want Lynch here this year. The man has rushed for 4,000 yards over the last 3 seasons. There's no question he has been the key cog in their offense. However, he also has had 900 carries over the last 3 years, and it's taken quite a toll on him because of his power-running style. So I'm not sure that the Seahawks are inclined to give him more money up front, knowing that next year they're probably moving on anyway.
So this thing could end up being a 15-rounder. Like these guys will just sit each other out, a game of chicken.
I think we definitely have a game of chicken or a game of poker here, whatever you want to call it. The other thing is, Marshawn Lynch just really doesn't want to practice in training camp. He came to the mini camp. He didn't work out, but he came believing in good faith. They would negotiate something. They saw that he's in good shape. He really doesn't need to be in camp. Even if he were here, he probably would only have 5 or 6 carries throughout the preseason game. So if he's willing to pay the $30,000 a day and miss 10 days of camp and then show up in the last week, then so be it. Maybe it doesn't hurt anyone at all. But the question is, if he doesn't get this money that he wants, is he going to be upset about it? How's it going to affect his attitude? And how will it affect his season going in? But the Seahawks, I think, are ready to give him fewer carries this year. I think they're ready to throw the ball more this year. They're still going to be a power-running team, but they are moving towards the direction of a team that won't have Marshawn Lynch more than likely in 2015.
Marshawn Lynch expected to hold out. We'll see how long it goes. Terry Blunt, ESPN Seahawks reporter. Thanks, Terry.
That was Spanning the Globe.
To bring you the constant variety of sports.
In the Herd on ESPN Radio.
That was Spanning the Globe. Barbecue fans, get to Subway for the delicious $6 footlong special, the barbecue oven roasted chicken melt at Subway. Eat fresh. Marshawn Lynch, though, the one thing I saw the story about him this week that was awesome, he has a Lamborghini, and he drives around with velvet ropes to put him around the Lamborghini so people don't mess with his Lamborghini. Look, if you own a Lamborghini, you wouldn't want people denting your car either, okay? That's all I'm saying. Not that I could afford a Lamborghini. I can't even afford the velvet ropes, I think. Those things are pretty expensive, but I'd do it if I were him. So, coming up next, I've got a conspiracy theory on the Cowboys and Jerry Jones. You're going to want to hear it. George Sedano in for Colin. Next, it's The Herd on ESPN Radio. The Herd on ESPN Radio and ESPNU. George Sedano in for Colin today. Don't miss SportsCenter's NFL training camp coverage of all 32 teams in 10 days. Today, SportsCenter is live at training camp with the Patriots, Seahawks, Niners, Jaguars, Titans, and the Cleveland Browns. Johnny Football. Can't get enough of them. You want them? We got them for you. Always hit us up on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. At The Herd for the show, at Sedano ESPN for myself. I do have a theory on the Cowboys that I want to get to. And look, I actually love the Cowboys because they're great for business. Jerry's always saying stuff. He's hiring like 37 coaches. You don't really know who's in charge. It's great. Well, you know Jerry's in charge, which has kind of been the problem to some extent. No one would ever deny that Jerry loves the Cowboys, right? But it's kind of like when you're in that relationship and it's going south and you can't really see that it's going south because you're so into the relationship and trying to save it and salvage it. But everyone else around you can see what's going on. Kind of the deal with Jerry and the Cowboys right now. But my conspiracy theory has to do with the expectations for this season. Now, look, Jerry's always going to be Jerry. He made those comments. I heard Colin talking about it, about his defense, and Greg Cosell shot it down. It's like, yo, their defense is going to be bad. Like, let's be honest here. But the thing that, to me, is the most important part, look, their defense is going to be bad, but Tony Romo has basically carried them for a number of years. For as much grief as he gets, he's done that. And we can joke about 8-8 always because of the Cowboys and Tony's fourth quarter debacles or whatnot, but they wouldn't even be in those games if it wasn't for Romo. And now he's dealing with an injury. And at 34, that can be a huge problem. I was talking to Tim Hasselback about it the other day. I know he was on SportsCenter. He was doing the rounds on radio, talking about just how difficult that is. And Daryl Moose Johnson was a guest here on this show and had this to say.
Having had back surgery in the past, I do know that you have to be very, very diligent about your rehab. You have to be very, very structured. And as you're moving through that early process, you know, that sets the foundation for the success that you're going to have. If you do your rehab and are very, very strict in the beginning coming off of surgery, then there's a good chance you're not going to have any issues.
Do you remember when Jerry made the comment about Jason Garrett's future? Oh, it's not make or break this year. Well, my conspiracy theory revolves around that and Romo's injury. And I know Romo's saying all the right things. Oh, I'm fine. I'll be ready to go. Look, he's limited. He should be. But I happen to think that for as many faults as Jerry Jones may have as a personnel guy, I think he's got his heart in the right place. Like I said earlier, he loves the Cowboys as much as anyone in the history of the planet, basically. That's why he owns them. But I think he said that not only to bring some perspective, but really to lower expectations some, I think, because he knows that Tony Romo's not going to be himself this season. At least the chances are that's not going to be the case because of a back injury at 34, coming off surgery. All the guys that have had it, you heard Moose Johnson there, basically say the same thing. Dude, he's not going to be the guy he's been. Now, maybe next year, the year under his belt, he'll be all right. But, man, like, you can't go forward here expecting the Cowboys to be good if Romo's not good. So I think Jerry's not going to saddle Jason Garrett and use him as the scapegoat, say, oh, we stink because of Jason Garrett. No, he's smart enough to realize that Tony may have a rough year, and a lot of it has to do with the injury, so he's not going to put his guy out to pasture. And Jason Garrett, who's been his guy. I like the fact that he's showing perspective, but to me, that's the theory. It's he knows Romo's not going to be right, so he's not going to put all the blame on Jason Garrett, saying, all right, you're out of here in a year where Tony was hurt. I don't think he's going to do that to him. 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Al is in the herd. What's up, Al? All right, here we go. Al, you there? Still working. All right, we'll get back to Al here in a second. Let me know when the phones are working and we can make this thing work. All right, here we go. Al.
You know, everyone outside of Dallas loves Romo, but what is Romo most known for? All these nice wins you claim he's gotten us, or those big losses that he's lost for us?
Well, you wouldn't even be in the games. Like, I'll give you the perfect.
How do you know?
Well, How do I know? Because I'll give you the example. That Broncos game. You remember that Broncos game last year?
The one that we lost?
Yeah, the one that you put up 48 points or whatever it was. Who do you think scored those 48 points? Did that just magically happen?
Who threw that key pick that was in the game?
Al, who gave up 52 points? Tony Romo. You're right. Tony Romo gave up 52 points or whatever it was. You're right.
No, he did the same thing he did against Green Bay, New York Jets, lots of other teams. We've had games won. You know, Romo's issue isn't that he hasn't won his games. Romo's issue is that he's lost us too many games.
Yeah, you're right. Romo's the reason that the Broncos scored 52 points. You're right. That's exactly the reason. Because Tony also plays linebacker, defensive line. I mean, honestly, I'm not going to sit here and say that Tony Romo hasn't lost you games. I mean, that'd be stupid to say. But not every game is on Tony Romo. I think Romo only threw 4 interceptions in the fourth quarter all season last year. And last time I checked, if a guy scores almost 50 points in a game, chances are you're going to win that game. It's in the 90th percentile where you're going to win that game. The Dallas Cowboys defense was atrocious last year. They gave up 5.2 yards per carry last year in the run game. Peyton Manning threw for what seemed like a bazillion yards against them. Now, he does that against a lot of teams, but come on. Let's have some perspective here. It's easy to blame Romo. That's Captain Easy stance right there. Al, though we do appreciate it, Al. Thank you for the call. Straight ahead, 2 other training camps are open. The Pats have Gronk back. But is Brady kind of a question mark moving forward? We'll get to that. George Sedano in for Colin. It's The Herd on ESPN. The Herd on ESPN Radio and ESPNU. George Sedano in for Colin today. Hit us up on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at The Herd for the show, at Sedano ESPN for myself. I want to get back to this Romo thing in a second, but I always find it funny on Twitter. I'm pretty sure if you follow me, you kind of realize I'm in on the joke. Like, I don't care. I like trolls, actually. I think it's fun. I think Twitter is fun. I don't really block very many people, unless it's just completely vulgar and just nonsense. But like today I got a really funny one, which was, all right, I'm giving it a shot. I'm going to hashtag unfollow you. Who announces they're going to unfollow somebody? Like, stop. So ridiculous. That I know the guys were giving Marshawn Lynch grief for having the velvet ropes that he carries in his Lamborghini, and then he puts it around the Lamborghini when he parks somewhere. I think the hashtag I'm going to unfollow you may top that from a schmuck scale, basically. Good Lord. This thing with Romo, man, I get it. We're all these prisoner of the moments. We live in this society that's a microwave society. Most people don't watch all his games or watch the games. They watch the highlights or they catch the last few seconds. They'll see what's on the red zone, whether it's Scott Hansen's red zone or Andrew Siciliano's red zone. And you see these snippets and you're like, oh, he's a chunker. Look, he's lost games. But you know what? Peyton Manning's lost games too. I'm not comparing the two. Not even close. But what I'm saying is guys lose games. And the more you throw in this league, the more interceptions you're going to throw. He just happens to be kind of that guy. Now, I'm not comparing him as a talent, but he's in kind of that A-Rod class as far as criticism. LeBron was in that class for a long time where it's like, oh, he's not clutch. He doesn't have the clutch gene. Clutch gene. Out of here with that nonsense. So silly. I mean, how many teams, if I asked you now on Twitter, 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at The Herd for the show, at Sedano ESPN for myself, how many fans would take Romo instead of their quarterback right now? Healthy Romo right now, today. I'm pretty sure a big chunk of them would. Michael is in The Herd. What's up, Michael?
Hey, George, what's going on? Thanks for taking my call.
Sure, man.
Yeah, man, I grew up in Jersey, diehard Giants fan, so it's kind of a sin what I'm about to say. But Romo gets such a bad rap, and I'm tired of fans down here in Texas saying how horrible he is and this, that, and the other. Man, if you went just a few hours south of Houston, I guarantee you every fan in Lions Stadium would take Romo over whoever they're rolling out, first Sunday of football this year. And I know you're from Miami. Did Marino get such a bad rap for not winning the big one? I feel like that's what Romo is being held under, that he's got to win a Super Bowl or he's nothing.
No, I think Marino, because he broke all those records, and, I mean, at the time when he retired, I mean, he had almost all of them. I think that kind of saved him from some of the national scrutiny. Plus, we didn't live in the 24-hour news coverage, social media, Twitter, instant reaction society then. I'm pretty sure Dan Marino would have gotten it now. I'm sure Michael Jordan would have gotten it in year 6 and 7 or whatever it was before he won a championship. That's just the world that we live in. Jacob is in the herd. What's up, Jacob?
Hey, how's it going? And thanks for taking my call.
Yeah,
Just want to let the Cowboy fans out there know, I mean, Tony Romo easily is a top 10 quarterback. I think he's just like Matthew Stafford, where you got this great offense, you just lack a defense, because if your quarterback can put up 40 or 50 points consecutively, if he can do that on multiple occasions, that means you have a pretty good quarterback. You just have a problem with your defense. If he puts up 6 touchdowns, 5 touchdowns, and you lose, you can't be mad if he throws 5 touchdowns and then 1 interception in the fourth quarter.
Exactly. I mean, it's like, come on, you should have won that game a long time ago. And look, that one game could cost you. That's it. That's the end of the day right there. And especially when you're in a league like the NFL, that it's predicated on teams going 8-8. It's predicated on parity. So one game means everything. And when you have one of the worst defenses in the league, it's just the deal. So, look, I'm not saying he's Peyton Manning. He's not Tom Brady, but he's not awful. Look, Joe Flacco won a Super Bowl. Would you take him over Romo? I wouldn't. Hell to the no. Now, again, he's not Manning and Brady. By the way, speaking of Manning and Brady, Broncos opened camp today, and some of the discussion has been what I think is somewhat of an overreaction to the loss in the Super Bowl. Like you're hearing people say, oh, they need to change their offense. Change your offense. Be more smash mouth. Look, you're never going to be that with Peyton Manning. Could they mix in some stuff in there? Yeah, potentially. My normal partner on radio, Mark Schlereth, Sedano and Stink, 7 o'clock Eastern here on ESPN Radio, was a guest with me on SVP and Rosillo. Man, that's a mouthful because I'm all over the place this summer, the summer of Sedano. And he had this to say about that particular subject.
The problem with Broncos is they don't have an inline tight end that could block me. I mean, that's how those guys are all pass catchers, and they don't carry a fullback on their roster. So it's one thing to say we want to be more balanced, we want to maybe call some plays in the huddle and run it, and it's another thing to actually be able to do that, and they don't have the personnel to do it.
Exactly. Because when you have Peyton Manning, you build your offense around Peyton Manning and his strengths. Right? You do that with any transcendent star. When you have LeBron, you build the team around LeBron. You put shooters around him. That's what you do. With Peyton Manning, you want to spread the field out. You want to get a bunch of receivers. You want to get a tight end, up-tempo. That's what you do. And you live and die with the results. Could you mix something in? Maybe. But why would you want to take the ball out of the best player's hands? Arguably one of the best quarterbacks in the history of the game. To me, if I'm the Broncos, where I look is, forget about the offense, is continue to add on the defensive end. I know they added DeMarcus Ware. That should help if he's still got something left in the tank, and I think he does. That's where I would focus my energy if I'm them. We love to overreact to the most recent thing. It's just what we do as a society. Again, it goes back to that instant gratification thing that we deal with now in this social media era. Meanwhile, I feel like the same thing happens with Tom Brady to an extent. Now, I've been guilty of this a little bit. I've said in the past, I don't think Belichick has done Tom Brady any favors as his career has gone on. As they transition to this kind of high-powered offensive team, they put, I thought, way too much on Brady's shoulders the last couple of years. And they didn't necessarily replace the Randy Mosses and Wes Welkers and those guys. And Gronk obviously got hurt. We know what happened with Hernandez. So he was kind of working with subpar-type players and still trying to carry them. Right now, it's interesting because they seem to be kind of going the other direction. They seem to be going a little old-school Patriots. They're starting to load up on defense again. Belichick's been drafting defense forever, right, for the last couple of years. Some guys hit, some guys miss. That's just the draft. What Belichick is the smartest guy in the room about is that he realizes the draft is a crapshoot. So you might as well just accumulate as many picks as possible and then just see what you land. And that's what he's been able to do. So now it seems like he's built a pretty good defense. They got Revis, and maybe that takes some of the pressure off of Brady. Yeah, they've added a Brandon LaFell, and Gronk may be healthy, and we'll see what the running game looks like, and if Shane Vereen is healthy. I'm not saying they're going to be the Brady when they won the first Super Bowl against the Rams, where he was a game manager. But I do think that they're going to go back to, or at least it seems like they're going to go back to the Teddy Bruschi days, right? When the defense was dominant, top 3, 4 in the league. That will prolong Brady's career. I think that's what the Broncos are trying to do with Peyton Manning as well. Coming up next, speaking of the Patriots and Teddy Bruschi, he joins us next from Pat's Camp. It's The Herd, ESPN Radio. All right, George Sedano and for Colin, it's The Herd on ESPN Radio and ESPNU. Always presented by Progressive Insurance. All guests appear via the Subway Fresh Take hotline. A lot of guests in the noon hour. Levitard is in town. They throw like a parade for him? He's never in Bristol. He may big-time me. Oh, he's going to stiff me? Oh, look at that. Going to saddle me with Stugotz is basically what he tells you. He's like, oh, just send in Stugotz. It'll be just fine. David Shaw going to check in with us later. Rich Rod. So a lot of guests coming up later in the show. Teddy Bruschi coming up in just a few moments. So been talking a lot about camps. And, man, this Romo thing. I mean, you can't mention the name Tony Romo, and people just explode, man. On my Twitter, it's going nuts. You can hit us up on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at The Herd for the show, at Sedano ESPN for myself, Sedano ESPN. Relax, people. I'm not saying he's Manning, Breeze, and Brady or Rodgers. He's in that next group. I would just take him over some of those other guys that have won some Super Bowls. That's just me. The numbers don't lie. And a lot of those other guys have won Super Bowls because they've got great talent around them on both sides of the ball. Romo, not so much. All right, let's get to the Patriots, though. Teddy Bruschi, 3-time Super Bowl champ, joins us now here on the Subway Fresh Take hotline. Teddy, you were on the Patriots when they had great defenses, and maybe I'm just being a little positive here, but do you think the Patriots defense is back?
Well, that's what they're hoping here, guys, is that the defense can be a unit that's at top 5, top 3 in the league, because I think they've proven it enough about that high-powered offense and however many points you score. It doesn't really matter unless your defense stops somebody come crunch time in the big game. So the returning guys that they have is going to be a plus. That coupled with the improvement of second and third-year players, especially like a Jamie Collins at linebacker. This linebacking crew can be one of the best that they've had for a long time. I mean, rivaling some of the linebacking crews that I've been on, with Mayo in the middle, Hightower, and also Jamie Collins. You know, I doubt a little bit the depth, and that's a question mark, but those are 3 major playmakers, veterans and young guys coupled in together that can do great things for them. Oh, and by the way, Darrelle Revis is out there on a corner.
Yeah,
so.
I'll get to him in just a second. But it is interesting because I was talking about this earlier, and I've said this for a while, that I feel like at times Tom has had to kind of carry the offense, at least the last year or two, and there haven't been enough weapons out there for him. But maybe because the defense will be that much stronger and they're kind of trying to turn the clock back a little bit in regards to the style of play, that could actually help him as far as winning games and even longevity-wise for Brady kind of moving forward.
Sure. So, I mean, I really think this team is guilty in the past of Brady watching. And what I mean by that is you're watching for one of the best quarterbacks of all time to do it on his own. No matter who's at wide receiver, having that mentality of Brady's going to make a play because basically he has to, and we have no one else. All right, this team, hopefully has completed the metamorphosis to not Brady watching anymore and hoping for 50 touchdown passes a year, and now starting to have a consistent defense, a running game, special teams, everything that makes this a championship contender, to where no matter what unit is on the field, they can get it done and win football games.
Teddy Bruschi, ESPN NFL analyst at Patriots Camp, joining us here on the Subway Fresh Take hotline. I was having this conversation with somebody about Gronk, and they said to me, look, he's so big, he's so strong, he's massive, that every collision with him is violent. And that has led to some of his injury issues. What do you feel about those comments? How do you feel about them?
Oh, I think it's valid somewhat, because especially a lot of his work is over the middle, in the middle of the field, where safeties can line him up. They can get a target on him to get a hit on. I mean, sometimes you have to go low now, coupled with the new rules. I mean, new rules that you can't take a player high, but you got to go low, and then all of a sudden a player goes too low, and it's at his ACL, and Gronk is out for the entire year. But, Rob really needs to have a year where he's there for 16 games. I mean, I've been in this training room where there's a sign that says durability is more important than ability. And one of my goals sometimes going into training camp was just be there for every practice or be there for every game of the regular season, because that's what this team values. And Rob hasn't been able to do that in a while. I mean, he's done it before, but going all the way back to college at the University of Arizona, there were years where he missed the entire year. So it's really on him now to hopefully the rehabilitation process was a success this year, this offseason, and going forward, the management that the Patriots used for him in training camp and preseason sets him up to play all 16.
Teddy, look, on offense, running the ball, they've done a good job of running by committee, but at some point, does Stephen Ridley kind of have to take the reins here a little bit?
I'd say yes, but if he doesn't, they'll bring someone else in. I don't think they really care. I think they want him to. They want him to show that, but they've given him those chances before, and he's failed. He's either given up the ball or had mental errors and shown a lack of mental toughness. That's what he's done in the past. So they'll give him another shot, especially with the loss of LeGarrette Blount. They had a fourth-round draft pick at the running back position, Vereen and Bolden. Whoever is the hot hand, that's who they will play. And if Ridley isn't there on a particular day, they'll move on to the next guy.
Darrelle Revis, you mentioned him earlier, now with the New England Patriots. How has he looked thus far, and how do you expect them to use him? Because he seemed to struggle at least a little bit last year in Tampa.
Well, I think relating it to my time here, when Ty Law played, we were special defensively. And when Darrelle Revis plays here for this team, and if he's consistent throughout the course of the season, this defense can be special because maybe they don't even put him on a team's best receiver. Maybe they put him on a number 2 receiver, all right, and then rotate all of the coverage over there to the number 1 threat. That's a different type of combination Coach Belichick and defensive coordinator Matt Patricia can now use. If you have that one piece, that's almost like a queen on a chessboard that can do anything. You put him anywhere, he can move any type of way and do whatever you want him to do. You can have combinations on various other places with tight ends, if you have a receiving tight end or another wide receiver. That's the type of flexibility they have. And that's like the number one thing that Belichick loves is flexibility within a defense so he can have different game plans week in and week out.
Teddy Bruschi, ESPN NFL analyst, joining us here. Where do you rank Revis now at the corner position? Is he still the guy?
Joe Hayden's good in Cleveland. Sherman's good. Peterson's good. There's a lot of good corners up there. I think to prove he's number 1, he needs a good season. I wouldn't put him at number 1 right now, but there's a jumbling of guys up there at the top that really can challenge Revis to be the best corner, where in years past there was no challenge.
Lastly here, better outlook in the AFC this year, the Broncos, the Pats, or someone else?
It's a toss-up between the Broncos and the Pats, guys. That's what it's been. Last year and also this year, I think it will come down to those two teams. But what the problem has been for the Patriots is that when they're in a Super Bowl or in the AFC Championship game, it's been the other team that's made that critical play at the critical juncture. So it's all about once they get there, because it may be a touch more competitive in the AFC East, but I see them winning the East again. But once they get to that divisional round or that championship Final Four weekend, which I like to call it, and who's going to make the plays? And that's what this is going to be all about for this team. But the tough part is you got to start from ground zero once again. Day 1, day 2, after a championship loss, and push the reset button as hard as it may be. But that's what you got to do.
Teddy Bruschi, ESPN NFL analyst out at Patriots camp. Teddy, thanks for the time, man. Appreciate it.
All right, guys, my pleasure.
Teddy Bruschi with us here on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Now, he made a great point to me, which is he thought the Patriots were guilty of Brady watching. And, normally that's like a term we use in the NBA, right? Remember like the Cavs, we used to always say, they just stand around and watch LeBron and let LeBron go to work and marvel at what LeBron does. You can do that in football a little bit too. There was a lot on Brady's shoulders the last couple of years, and I do think that's the smart thing is go defense. That's why the Broncos are doing what they're doing. Go defense. Those guys, you give them some weapons, but you can prolong their careers if they've got the complementary side on the other side. It's what Romo doesn't have. I know everyone's on Romo, this, that, and the other. Look, we live in this world And we're guilty of it here at ESPN. We are guilty of it. And a buddy of mine calls it the magical QB world, where everything is on the QB, good, bad, or indifferent. It's not always like that, man. There's 60-something snaps for the offense and 60-something snaps for the defense, right, on average. It's not always just about the quarterback. It's about the protection, dominating the lines of scrimmage. All that stuff matters, but we only talk about the magical QB world. Now, the great ones, Brady, Manning, those guys, Rodgers, Breeze, those guys can give you consistent success. But not every quarterback is like that. There's only 4 or 5 of those guys for a reason. But we need to stop with the magical QB world. Lines of scrimmage matter on both sides. Coming up next, we always debate paying college players, but is there another issue that needs immediate attention? Plus, I came up with a list yesterday on SVP and Russillo with Ryan. Woo! That set people off. We'll get to that as well. George Sedano in for Colin. It's The Herd on ESPN Radio. It's The Herd on ESPN Radio and ESPNU. George Sedano in for Colin today. Make sure you hit us up on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. At The Herd for the show. At Sedano ESPN for myself. I got a lot of college football stuff I want to get to here. I just laugh at all the Romo tweets. Like, man, he is so polarizing. Good Lord. The guys and I were just talking, though, about just the movies. I'm a big movie fan. And what an awful summer it's been for movies. Normally, and look, I'm kind of a movie snob, okay? And I won't get up and just watch any movie. I have to, it has to fit a couple of categories. It has to fit something I think will be award-winning. Yeah, I'm that snob. Yes, I'm that guy. Or something that triggers my childhood. Like, I love all the superhero movies, Batman, Spider-Man, that kind of stuff. I'll watch those. I'm also guilty. Yes, I am a snob. Though, what was the one that Colin liked last year? The foreign flick. He was always into it. He kept plugging it day in and day. What was it? He was plugging Philomena. Oh, Philomena. Yeah, I mean, come on. I'm not going that far. But look, I was a guy that, years ago I would go see Memento, Christopher Nolan. That was before anyone knew who he was. And it was an Oscar-nominated film. It was unbelievable. If you've never seen it, check it out. So it's been terrible at the box office this year. Vince was telling me that it's been the worst summer in like 20 years. It might go to show Hollywood that you may need to come up with some original ideas. All these remakes, that's not working anymore. But there is one movie I want to check out soon. I know it's coming up. It's like a James Brown biopic. Get On Up. I will watch that because I was in on Ray. I thought Jamie Foxx was obviously excellent. And I loved Walk the Line, too. I didn't know much about Johnny Cash. I knew a little bit about his music. I knew a lot more about Ray Charles. I was floored at how good Joaquin Phoenix was. So, I thought he was really good. So I'm really interested in this James Brown movie. Hopefully it'll save the summer because, God help us, man. It's been terrible. Let's go, Hollywood. Step up your game, man. Grease 4 isn't bringing people to the theater, The 37th installment of Spider-Man isn't doing it for everyone anymore. They just rebooted Spider-Man again a couple of years ago. I thought Tobey Maguire was fine. Like, what happened to Tobey? Then they got the Facebook kid or what is it, the social network kid. Good Lord. So, yesterday I saw this story on PTI about college football. I'm a college football junkie. I'm an NBA junkie, college football junkie, kind of football junkie in general, even though baseball, like most of you, was my first love. Baseball, man, it's tough. And, God, I can't watch more than a couple innings at a time now. But anyway, there's a story about the transfer rules, and the NCAA may be potentially loosening up, relaxing some of the transfer rules. I think that would be a brilliant idea. It would. And I think that it would really kind of, look, college football recruiting is already crazy and dirty as it is, but I do think that these kids can get the shaft a little bit because these coaches, they move all over the place. And when you're a kid, you're going to a college for a number of reasons to play sports. You want to play for that coach because he fits or you fit in his system or whatnot. And, maybe you can play right away and it just all works itself out. It's a good fit for you. These coaches leave and then you're out. You're like, the new guy comes in, you may not fit in. So I think they can absolutely relax them. And I thought Jason Whitlock yesterday was in on PTI, and he had a great suggestion.
Don't let kids transfer within power conferences without the penalty of a one-year sit-out. But if they transfer down, let them be eligible immediately.
I'm with you on that.
And then I wouldn't want. Now, if a kid plays 2 years at a small school and wants to transfer up, make him sit out a year and allow him to transfer up.
Yeah, I think that his premise is excellent because if you allow the kids to transfer up without any penalty, without sitting out a year, basically all these big schools are going to cherry pick guys. And that was kind of their point yesterday on PTI. And I get that. But I do think there should be some more movement or some flexibility when it comes to movement. Because, these kids get saddled, man. Again, a coach leaves and you're done, right? New coach doesn't like you. You're in the doghouse. You don't fit his system. You should be able to transfer out of the Power 5. Doesn't mean you have to go to 1AA or whatever. You can go to one of the, you can go to Conference USA or the Sun Belt or wherever. Guys get drafted out of there all the time now. Look, majority of people get drafted out of the SEC, ACC, Pac-12, Big 10, Big 12. But, look, T.Y. Hilton is a star receiver in Indianapolis, Sun Belt, Florida International University. We have guys like that. So you could transfer down, and you shouldn't have to deal with the penalty. It'd be a smart move. I know the Pac-12 was pushing for that. So one thing I wanted to get to, too, was this coaches thing that we did yesterday. Good Lord, man. Look, I get enough tweets and hate mail as it is. I think it's hilarious. I think it's funny. I have a sense of humor about that stuff. Some people don't. I get it. I don't take myself that seriously. But we did a coaches list yesterday. Russillo came up with the idea to do a coaches list yesterday on SVP and Russillo. I sat in on that show this week because Scott is out. And I couldn't believe the type of reaction that we got to this thing. And all of this is a top 5. Any list is subjective, but people go nuts whenever you put out a list. And I was talking to Vince about this, and it's like when Colin does his herd hierarchy every week. People are like, why didn't you put my team in there? Relax, man. It can change. It's all subjective. And we did a list of the top 5 college football coaches right now. We did. We did the list. And it's, again, subjective. And my list was kind of molded after this. It was a combination of coaches who have dominated the college football landscape and some guys that have just done something with nothing. They've made the most of their situation with very little resources, not a lot of flash to their programs, and they've created something out of nothing. And what you end up getting is people are like, well, why didn't you put my guy in? It's only 5 spots, man. And we left out a lot of great coaches. And if I could extend the list to 10, maybe we'd have all those guys in there. But, again, it boils down to kind of the newest thing is the greatest thing. And people take that stuff really personally. College football fan, I don't think there's any doubt in my mind, is by far the most passionate fan in sports. Forget about baseball. Baseball fan's pretty relaxed. Football fan, NFL fan gets in it, like we've seen the Romo reaction. NBA fan can get into it. College football fan, because there is this belief that they're yours. Like you went to school there in a lot of cases, so you're like, I'm part of it. I'm part of this. This is mine. Like, listen to Paul Feinbaum. Phyllis, she's going nuts on people.
Roll Tide, roll.
See what I'm saying? She's not a big fan of Colin either, that Phyllis.
It's a work ethic, Cowherd.
You know what I mean? She doesn't like Danny Cannell either, too. Not a big fan. Though Cannell, I love Cannell. I've known Cannell for a long time. He's got a little Baylessian type of tactics to him on Twitter. I'm on to you, Cannell. I'm on to you. But coming up next, I'll give you that list. I want you guys to react to it. I think it's fun to do this stuff because, again, it's all subjective, and it's a combination of guys who've dominated and guys who have really just kind of done something with nothing. We'll get to that coming up next. George Sedano in for Colin. It's The Herd on ESPN Radio. The Herd on ESPN Radio and ESPNU. George Sedano in for Colin. Twitter's going mad. They're mad at me. Movie snub! Somebody called me a movie hipster for our conversation earlier. We'll get to the top 5 college coaches list that upset everyone yesterday when I was in on SVP and Russillo with Ryan. We came up with our list, but Tune in for an NL West battle tomorrow as the Dodgers visit the Giants. Coverage begins at 8 o'clock Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPNRadio.com, and the ESPN Radio app. Brought to you by Buffalo Wild Wings. Wings, beer, sports. Yeah, people are yelling at me. Look, I haven't been able to see a bunch of movies. Now, look, I heard this Snowpiercer movie is good, but people are just angry, man. They're just yelling at me. Captain America. I wasn't into Captain America the first time around. Like, just, doesn't really do much for me. And I saw the movie where the Avengers movie or whatever, or when they all got together or whatever. I was in on that. But I'm not a huge comic book guy, though I would love to go to Comic-Con. Only because I'm not into most of that stuff, but I would love to people watch there. I would find it hard to believe that there would be a better place to people watch than Comic-Con. I do. I think it would be hard to believe, but especially in San Diego. That's a great town. I know Colin was just there, so. But, yeah, look, movie people, relax. That's all I'm telling you. Relax. I just don't think look, there's a reason people aren't going, right? The movies aren't attractive. I saw this. I tried to even give Tom Cruise this movie. He was, God, what was the name? Oblivion, right? I saw this on HBO the other day. It was the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. 10 minutes into that movie, I was like, what is happening here? And listen, I love, again, strange movies. Like Memento is the strangest movie I've ever seen, and it's awesome. Christopher Nolan, back in the day. And this Oblivion thing, I was like, can we just blow this movie up into Oblivion? It was so bad. Like, Cruise, I heard the new movie that he's just come out with is pretty good, but it's like, come on, man. Like, he's one of these guys that, Levitard says it best. He's the same guy in every movie. He's just cocky something or other. Top Gun, cocky fighter pilot. Last Samurai, cocky military guy who became a samurai. That's who he is. He's the same guy in every movie. But there are some guys I will watch every movie. Like Joaquin Phoenix is a guy I will watch. I also have a small place in my heart for rom-coms. What? Yes. John Cusack. You get a Cusack movie, I'm in. I'm in on Cusack all day. Love Cusack. And he does some serious movies pretty well. 8 Men Out was a good movie. But I'm in. Like certain guys, I'm in. But Brad Pitt, I'm in. Clooney, I'm in. Even though that Gravity movie, that was terrible. And I know everyone's like, you need to watch it in the theater. It was awful. Anyway, top 5 college football coaches. So here's the list that got everyone all bent out of shape. And again, it's all subjective, guys. And my list is a combination. I didn't want to just say, here are all the guys that have won championships, so those guys are the best 5 coaches. Because that's not always the case, especially with college football. You can be a great recruiter and not necessarily a great tactician, or you can be a great tactician and not be a great recruiter. So my list is a combination of both those and guys who have won at the highest levels and dominated and made something out of nothing. So the top 5 list, to me, the first 2 were the easiest, and they're Nick Saban and Urban Meyer, right? Nobody should be able to argue with that, right? Nick Saban is the greatest college football coach of this era. Fair to say? And I would say the next guy is Urban Meyer. And I think he's going to do a really good job at Ohio State. I think Ohio State needed a guy like Urban Meyer because as good as their teams were in the past, they certainly struggled when it came to competing against the SEC. Urban knows, having won there, what it takes to win in the SEC. So those 2 were easy. Then this is where I started to get a little wacky. Oh, no, it's the wacky sportscaster guy. All right, I went with Chris Peterson, 3rd. And people are like, Chris Peterson? What the hell are you talking about? Dude, if you can win 2 BCS bowl games at Boise State, you're good. Now, we'll see how good he is at Washington. And I know, their schedule and conference stinks, blah, blah, blah. Again, when he played the big boys, he played them. And he played them, either he beat most of them, or it was down to the wire. With inferior talent. Hence, great tactician. And got guys to go to Boise State. I mean, who would ever done that? I know there was a little success, Dan Hawkins before him and guys before him, but he took it to a different stratosphere. So that's why he's 3. 4 is one of our guests later, David Shaw. I think David Shaw, to me, he is Like, if I had to send my kid to a school, I'd send it to these next two guys. One, David Shaw. Stanford is not a football factory. I know they've had good players. They've actually had great coaches there in the past. Harbaugh, Bill Walsh. But Stanford isn't Florida. Florida State, USC, Texas, Michigan. They're not football factories. They are student athletes. They are real student athletes there. And he's been able to still get in BCS games, play well after Andrew Luck, after Harbaugh, and doing it at a school that's hard. Like, most people thought when Harbaugh left, that thing was going downhill. Fast. That's not the case. And then the last guy I had was Art Briles. I mean, you want to talk about making something out of nothing? Go look this up. You want to guess how many losing seasons Baylor had in the Big 12 before Art Briles got there? 14. They were the hottest team in the country at one point last year. Had they been in the top 25 to start the season, which they weren't, there may have been a moment where they were one of the top 2 teams in the country. I think they topped out at 3 last year. RG3, all the success after RG3, and he's a guy that's adapted, man. He was a brilliant high school coach, had success at Houston, and then has taken a school like Baylor. I mean, Baylor's a laughingstock before Art Briles, and has taken him to a different stratosphere. So those are my 5. And I know Florida State fan got really upset at me because I didn't include Jimbo Fisher. And look, Jimbo Fisher, yeah, he's probably in the top 10 in that realm. Les Miles was a guy I really struggled with. Spurrier, Mark Richt. There's a lot of SEC coaches I could have included. A lot of coaches in general that I could have included. Kevin Sumlin, another SEC coach I could have included. But it's hard when you're narrowing it down to 5. And again, it's subjective. I'm not saying you have to agree with me, but those are my reasons for those guys. People got mad. People are going to get mad right now. I'll be on every message board in the country again. He hates Florida State. No, I don't. I look at Jimbo Fisher, and I think to myself, here's what Jimbo Fisher does really, really well. He can recruit his butt off. And you know what else he does really well? He hires unbelievable assistants. But you know who he reminds me of a little bit? The only difference is he has a title and this guy doesn't. Butch Davis. Butch Davis at Miami and then later at North Carolina was an unbelievable evaluator of talent. Not only could he get the big-name guys, but people forget when he was at Miami and recruited Ed Reed. Ed Reed was like a 2-star guy. He's a Hall of Famer. So Butch was great at that. Some of the tactician stuff I don't think he was as good at. And I kind of look at Jimbo that way, too. I heard Jimbo's kind of a micromanager of sorts. That was kind of some of the issues with E.J. Manuel. And then he's kind of loosened up a little bit around Jameis. Or Jameis has let him loosen up. Look, Jimbo's a great coach. Just because he doesn't make my top 5 doesn't mean he shouldn't make yours. But Florida State fan was irate about Jimbo Fisher's omission. And I like him. He's good. But I like the other guys more. There are a number of guys I would like more than him. But, again, doesn't mean he's not one of the great coaches in college football. You get so mad. Relax. All right, we'll get your thoughts on this. We'll open it up to you guys. A lot of stuff on the table, obviously, today. 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. You can hit us up on Twitter, on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at The Herd for the Show, at Sedano ESPN. We'll take some of your calls. We'll get some of your tweets. And I've got some NBA stuff coming up, some stuff I'm hearing. We'll get to that as well. George Sedano in for Colin. It's The Herd on ESPN. The Herd on ESPN Radio. George Sedano in for Colin. Presented by Progressive Insurance. Now you can test drive Snapshot, even if you have insurance with another company. See how much you save before you switch. A lot of people weighing in, obviously, on this discussion about the coaches list. Kind of like my Herd hierarchy for the day. And, look, Bill Snyder at Kansas State, Russillo had him on his list yesterday when we did this. And I marvel at what he's accomplished at Kansas State. Not once, but twice. I mean, he went away. Came back. I mean, look, I think you can make the case. To me, 3, 4, 5 could be replaced by a number of guys. And a lot of them are guys that people are suggesting. Bob Stoops, certainly. I mean, he's been fantastic. But you can only fit 5. But 3, 4, 5 interchangeable on most people's lists. I think it's pretty fair to say 1 and 2, though, would be, most people would be in agreement with that. But, yeah. Still being called a hipster, by the way, about movie stuff. Stick to sports, Sedano. You don't know anything about movies if you don't like Oblivion. That's a sci-fi flick for the Hall of Fame. Dude, that movie was terrible, dude. Awful. Garbage. Hot garbage. Straight up. Sorry. Twitter's fun, man. I love Twitter. I also, speaking of Twitter, I can't quit Jose Canseco on Twitter. I've tried to quit Jose Canseco on Twitter, but when he's tweeting pictures of goats in his car and apologizing to Mark McGwire and trying to tell Mark McGwire, hey, let's have a home run derby to settle this. Like, you can't, he's just too much comedy for me. I love him. I wish I knew how to quit you. I do. I can't quit Jose Canseco on Twitter. I can't. And look, everyone's got that one, right? Like, there's someone you follow on Twitter that you can't quit. Jose Canseco is that guy for me. He completes my Twitter world. Let's go to the phones. 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Patrick is in the herd. What's up, Patrick?
Hey, regarding your football coaches, one I thought could be probably would be maybe in your top 7 fringe, but would be like my 4 or 5 would be Mark D'Antonio, Michigan State.
Yeah. I mean, look, he's been phenomenal. He has arguably the best defense in college football, so I would agree. Patrick needs a coffee today, too, man. Yo, I don't even drink coffee that much. When I do this show, I do. I get a little coffee action going, a little iced coffee. And when I do Mike and Mike, I need like 7 coffees, I think, at this point, when I do that show. James is in the herd. What's up, James?
Hey, yeah, just Bill Snyder and stuff. Yeah, I like how you mentioned you've done it twice and everything. A good example of this last year is like the team, we were 2-4 and turned around and then winning a bowl game for the first time since the early 2000s.
Yeah, listen, Bill Snyder. It's Manhattan. Russillo said it best yesterday when we were talking about this. It's Manhattan, Kansas, dude. And he's done it twice. Like, he's built a good program there twice. And it's not like Michael Bishop is walking through that door anymore, you know? Let's go to Alex in the herd. What's up, Alex?
Hey, Sedona, I love the show, man. I just wanted to say, I know this is kind of a stretch, probably maybe not even the top 10, top 15, but I think Mike Leach at Washington State kind of always turns a program around. Like when he was at Texas Tech, he took them from down in the dumps to taking them up to the top 2 teams in the nation that one year. I know it's that 1 year, but I'm just saying, man, you got to kind of see him.
It's funny because Russillo and I were talking about that yesterday. He was at that game in 2008 when they played Texas, and he said it was one of the most ridiculously intimidating, awesome atmospheres he's ever been at. And that's not one of those 100,000-seat stadiums where you can say, all right, it's not Neyland Stadium at Tennessee, or it's not any of those SEC stadiums, or, you know, the Big House in Michigan, or the Horseshoe at Ohio State, where there's so many people that you're like, whoa, where am I? And he said it was one of the best atmospheres he's ever been in. I remember watching that game, and look, I like Texas. To me, they're great for business, but it was hard as someone who didn't have, I was impartial on that particular contest, but it was hard not to root for Texas Tech in that spot. And Mike Leach is awesome. He's a pirate. He loves pirate stuff. He's crazy. Who doesn't love him? I do think he'll do well at Washington State, because Washington State obviously has history, right? Dennis Erickson, many, many moons ago, had success there, and obviously they had success with Ryan Leaf, who, that didn't necessarily translate to the NFL, but they had a lot of success there. Well, maybe not a lot. Let me slow down. They've had some success there. So it's possible to win there. Alex is in the herd. What's up, Alex?
Hey, I was just wondering about George O'Leary from UCF, who beat Art Briles in the Fiesta Bowl. Yeah. And the biggest upset in the bowl season.
Yeah, that's a good one. UCF is kind of like, just a school. It's nothing out of this world. Again, 3, 4, 5 can be completely interchangeable. I'm not going to change my position on guys, but you can certainly talk me into, tying guys or switching guys out. I'm not, but I can understand if you would. Speaking of switching guys out, we have a trade that's supposed to happen here in the NBA. Like, what is the holdup with this Andrew Wiggins, Kevin Love thing? This 30-day thing, we had Mark Stein on earlier and we talked about it, and I'm hearing that's nonsense. They can just agree in principle, right? They can agree in principle that Wiggins and whomever will go to Minnesota for Kevin Love. And this is going to happen sooner rather than later. It's going to be reported, and what's going to happen is, as Mark said, teams are going to deny this because what LeBron wants, he's going to get in Cleveland. You have to think, right, that LeBron got assurances from Dan Gilbert when he had his 4-hour meeting, as Adrian Wojnarowski of Yahoo reported, with Dan Gilbert. It's basically, I'm in charge now. I know I was kind of in charge before, but now I'm really in charge because I've got 2 pieces of jewelry with me. And what is Dan Gilbert going to say? Of course he's going to say yes. That's what he's got to do. He's got to appease LeBron. It's like the movie Captain Phillips, right? Look at me, Irish. I'm the captain now.
2 skiffs approaching with armed intruders.
That's what LeBron is saying to Dan Gilbert. Look at me, Gilbert. I'm the captain now. That's the deal, Gilbert. So go get me Kevin Love. Get it. I believe in the Simmons conspiracy theory. It's not just his. A lot of people had it. I heard him on with Colin, where it's like he left them off the letter. They had that letter crafted, man, for a little bit, a couple days. So it's not like that was just an omission. They knew what they were doing there. Go get him, Gilbert. He's got a 1-year opt-out. He's going to hold that thing over your head. You don't want that to happen. Speaking of LeBron, old stomping ground Miami, Levitard, Stugatz, next. The Herd, George Sedano and for Colin here on ESPN Radio and ESPN U. Yeah. All presented by Progressive Insurance. All guests appear via the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. David Shaw and Rich Rod coming up this hour. You can always hit us up on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at The Herd for the show, at Sedano ESPN for myself, SEDANO ESPN. People are mad at me. Kind of always the case. You're not the guy who sits in on that show. Why are you that guy? You're not that guy. I'm going to yell at you because you're not that guy and because your taste in movies stink. And sports, too. You don't give good enough hot sports takes. Like the guy who's sitting next to me. The Dan Levitard show is in Bristol. This doesn't happen very often. I don't think it's ever happened, actually, with all of them. Stugatz is in studio with me. You can follow him on Twitter, at Stugatz790. I feel like they should be following you with, like, a camera, like as a documentary. It's kind of like one of those like Animal Planet pieces, like Discovery Channel. Here comes the guts over the ridge here on campus in Bristol.
I feel like they are. I feel like our executive producer, Mike Ryan, is doing exactly that. There have been several funny moments with our visit here to Bristol in the first 3 hours we've been here. So I feel like Mike is taping it, George. I do.
Listen, the one I heard, which we're going to save for your show, 4 o'clock Eastern here on ESPN Radio.
We're going to lead the show with this story.
When Mike Ryan and Dan told me the story in the hallway, my stomach, like the sides of my stomach were in pain about how much I was laughing. That you're going to have to tune in if you're going to lead the show. You got to tune in for that.
Were you surprised, by the way?
No, not at all. Okay. Absolutely not.
You know me pretty well here.
For almost 15 years. Yes. I know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Now, look, for those that aren't familiar with the Levitard show, John, I think that we can encapsulate the Levitard show and the experience of Dan and Stugatz and Mike Ryan with a piece of sound that we recovered from one of their previous shows, right? This is how I would encapsulate your show to the national audience for those that don't tune in, 4 o'clock Eastern on ESPN Radio.
Ethan Skolnick continues with us now on the Subway Fresh Take.
Basically, Stugatz choking on a peanut.
Why, though? Why would you do that? I wasn't choking on a peanut. Dan did that, actually, at the American Airlines Arena once. Right. The water went down the wrong pipe. But did you notice how Greg Cody was right there for me? Like, had my back, was right there for me, George.
I mean, listen to this thing. I mean, listen to the struggle on this man's voice. And you could just envision it on his face as he's trying to spit out the corporate sponsorship there.
Ethan Skolnick continues with us now on the Subway Fresh Take.
I was listening to that in the car.
Yeah.
And I almost ran off the road.
Right.
Because I know you, so it makes it easier to laugh at you. But, that was phenomenal.
But if you stretch that audio out a bit, because Cody, Dan is off. He was off that day, and Cody was sitting in with me, Greg Cody from the Miami Herald. And Cody, so I'm like flailing, I'm waving my arms. Cody, you got to pick me up here. You got to pick me up here. Cody, you need to speak, okay? But he's looking down at his phone, George. You know Greg, and he's doing a Vine or he's doing something. And Greg, in an effort to bail me out, because I couldn't speak anymore, just says, "Hello? Ethan, are you there?"
Ethan Skolnick continues with us now on the Subway Fresh Take.
Hey, listen, you got the corporate sponsorship out there. That's all that matters, George. All that matters. You got it done. They can check it off the log. Now, again, you must be like a kid in a candy store because you got like coaches walking around, like the entire Pac-12 is here. Like I wish you would have probably been better off here, like when the SEC was here, like Saban. I feel like you would have tried to gas. You would try to gas bag about Saban, but when Saban would be in the room with you, you totally try to chummy up with him.
I gas bagged about Saban. I ripped Saban for years. We finally got him on the show a couple of years ago, and you're right, I sucked up to him. That's what I do.
Yeah.
And listen, it doesn't matter what coaches are here. It can be from any conference, as long as there are coaches here.
Right.
So I am in my heaven. It's, there's sports everywhere. There's sports on TV everywhere. There's radio studios. There's Pac-12 coaches. I sat in Mort's cubicle earlier, and I did an NFL report. It's amazing. We're going to tweet that out in a little bit. Yeah, this is George, I imagine, for me, this is what my heaven looks like. Yeah. This is what I imagine heaven to be like.
Yeah. Now, listen, we've been talking about stuff today. I kind of want to get your thoughts. This is totally up your alley. Russillo and I yesterday did a top 5 college football coaches list. I feel like this is totally up your alley.
Right.
If you were doing the show and not Dan, you would be doing the top 5 college football coaches list.
If I was doing the show by myself, left to my own devices, I would do nothing but top 5 lists.
You'd be like that movie. What's it? High Fidelity with John Cusack. Top 5 lists of everything.
That's all I would do, yeah.
Now, my top 5 encompasses domination in college football and guys who have made something out of nothing.
Right.
I got Nick Saban, Urban Meyer.
Uh-huh.
Then I got Chris Peterson, formerly of Boise State, now Washington.
Right.
And I've got David Shaw, who's coming up in a few minutes, of Stanford, and Art Briles. Where's Stugatz's top 5?
So it has to be current, present coaches?
Yeah, guys are coaching.
I can't go back to like Bear Bryant. I can't go back to any of those guys.
No.
I mean, Nick Saban is the obvious number 1.
Right.
So I'm with you on that. I want to give like 15 coaches so badly. But Nick Saban is definitely number 1. I guess Urban Meyer would be number 2, as much as I don't like Urban Meyer. I guess he would be number 2.
Well, wait a second. Why does he, if you don't like him, what does that have to do with his resume?
Oh, George, you know my personal feelings weigh into everything. I'm surprised I put him at number 2, to be honest, with the amount of disdain I have for Urban Meyer.
You're surprised at yourself?
Yeah, I'm shocked at myself, to be honest with you. Now I'm trying to think if I can name 3 other college football coaches, and I'm not certain that I can. That's the. Can I go Nick Saban, Urban Meyer?
Yeah.
I'll throw Gus Malzahn in there because he's the guy who won the most recent national championship.
Well, actually, no, he didn't. Jimbo Fisher did.
I'll put Jimbo Fisher in there because he's the guy who most recently won a national championship. So we got Jimbo Fisher, we've got Gus Malzahn, we've got Nick Saban,
Right.
and then I'm with you on Urban Meyer.
Yeah,
okay?
that's a lot more than 5. Though.
So Florida State won the national championship last year?
Did you fall asleep? Is that what happened?
I didn't watch that game. Are you kidding me? Game started way too late.
9 o'clock kickoff? What are you talking about? Are you serious? Who's watching this stuff?
Why would that shock you? I walked out on the greatest shot in NBA history.
That's
right
true.
On.
Game 6, he was gone.
Yeah.
He was gone. And then we had like that great coverage, right? We had all the different channels had the game on. That's the thing. You didn't watch because you wanted to be part of the coverage.
Of course I wanted to be part of
And
the
you were
coverage.
upset that some other people were there. Like, Russillo had a channel with Michael and Jamel, and, there was the coaches channel. You wanted to be on that channel with Michael, Jamel, and Russillo.
Of course I did. The Stugatz channel. I'm hoping that ESPN creates a Stugatz channel, a Stugatz network
It
at
might.
some point. Yeah, it might.
I mean, look, stranger things have certainly happened.
Based on the coaching stuff that I just did with you, you think I have a good chance at the at College Game Day?
Yeah, probably not.
No? Herbie never going to have me on? Fowler?
Herbie. Let me just call him Herbie.
Herbie's my boy.
Never met him in your life.
Never. I have no idea. He has no idea who I am.
LeBron.
Yeah.
Just go. I'm just going to say LeBron. Go.
Listen, LeBron.
I'm going to let you gas back. I'm giving you the podium here.
Listen, I totally respect what he did, George, going home, and you and I have had this discussion before. Totally respect what he did, his desire to go home. He's a free agent. He's free to do what he wants. But it's the same issue I had with him 4 years ago when he left Cleveland. And what's bothered me about the coverage around LeBron James is the fact that, everyone's applauding him for doing it differently, for growing up, for maturing, doing it differently this time around. And I don't really see the big difference this time around as opposed to what he did 4 years ago to Dan Gilbert and the Cavalier fan.
He was just more media savvy about it. He appeased the media is what he did.
Well, at least last time around, he did something that generated $2.5 million for a charity.
Right.
Like, I would think anything, we should be applauding that, not the way he did it this time. So listen, I feel like it's disrespectful to Pat Riley. You want to do that to Dan Gilbert, fine. You want to disrespect him, fine. But to have Riley come all the way out to Las Vegas when you've already penned a letter to Sports Illustrated saying that you're going to Cleveland, you've made up your mind. There's no need to drag Riley out to Las Vegas and have him kind of beg you to come back to Miami.
How would
doesn't feel right.
How would you have handled that?
Well, that's what I've always said.
No. If you were like if he would have done that to you, if you were Pat Riley, how do you handle it?
I told Dan I would have given LeBron an ultimatum, like a 24-hour, like here's the contract, you need to sign it.
On the planet. You need to sign it now.
Well, yeah, and he has all the leverage. I realize that, but I would have put right after the season ended, I would have said, here's the contract, here's the extension. You have 48 hours to sign this. I'm not going to let you drag this thing out. 48 hours. Sign it or we move on.
You're such a clown. You would never do that.
And now here's the other thing with LeBron, and I've always said this. The reason I have such an issue with LeBron is he did business the way I would do business.
Right, which is the stunning part of all of this.
No, but if you conduct your business the way I conduct my business, then you're conducting your business the wrong way.
All right, fair enough.
All right?
Dan Le Batard Show with Stu Gatz, Mike Ryan. They're all here in Bristol. I'm sure there'll be a lot of fun today. Not that they're not fun every day, but 4 o'clock Eastern, ESPN Radio.
You sure about Florida State last year?
Pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty sure.
Yeah. News to me. All right. Congratulations to Jimbo.
Dan Le Batard Show with Stu Gatz, 4 o'clock Eastern here on ESPN Radio. I'll see you, buddy. Coming up next, David Shaw, Stanford head coach. He checks in with us. We'll talk to him about some big comments, some tough talk about the SEC. That's next. It's The Herd. George Downer for Colin, ESPN Radio. In your everyday life, you sometimes find yourself in a situation that makes you uncomfortable. But when you're wearing Hanes T-shirts, underwears, and socks with revolutionary X-Temp technology, you'll keep your cool. Designed to respond to your body temperature and speed evaporation, keeping you dry and comfortable. Uncomfortable moments happen to us every day, like me and Stu Gatz just now. And Hanes X-Temp technology is there for you when you find yourself in an uncomfortable moment. So whether you forgot to hit the mute button in that meeting or you're teaching your 16-year-old how to drive, you'll keep it cool. You'll keep your cool. Hanes X-Temp technology, because when you're cool, you're comfortable. David Shaw, Stanford head coach, next. Third on ESPN Radio and ESPNU, presented by Progressive Insurance. All guests appear via the Subway Fresh Take hotline. We've talked a lot of college football the last 40 minutes or so, and we're now joined here, giving us his Subway Fresh Take in studio. Stanford head coach David Shaw joining us now here. Thank you for stopping by. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it, of course.
It's been a busy day, I'm sure, for you at this point.
Non-stop.
That's good. Where have you gone today? Just out of curiosity.
I couldn't tell you, but I've been everywhere. I've been everywhere on this campus.
You are now you're now well aware of all the different bowels and areas of this particular company, this particular campus. So, let me ask you this. I got to start here because it's got to be hard. And I know there's some tradition, obviously, but it's not a football factory, Stanford. And you're really recruiting student athletes. What's it like to recruit for you?
Yeah, a lot of people, before I got there, and I went to Stanford, and I understood to a certain degree, they talked about how difficult it was. But now that we've been in it, this is going on my 8th year at Stanford, 4th year as a head coach, it's really almost easy to identify the kids that we're looking for because they stand out in the classroom, they stand out on the football field. So the best thing about it for us is we can go from coast to coast to Hawaii and Canada looking for the kids that stand out. So for us, the identification process is relatively easy. Now it's convincing them, you know what, you don't want to choose between football and academics. We're the one place that can give you the best of both.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being most annoyed, how annoyed are you about all the SEC stuff? Because you get asked it all the time, and every coach does.
Is there SEC stuff? I haven't noticed. Apparently, for some reason, I'm a topic of conversation on SEC Media Day, which I'll take as a sign of respect, I guess. But, we don't think about it. We don't worry about it. I started a firestorm by answering a question, which I thought was a common sense answer, which is, since we have a new playoff system, we should all play by the same rules going into the playoffs. And for some reason, people took offense to that I was talking about someone in particular, which I really wasn't. I was talking about all of us in college football because I'm as excited as anybody.
Yeah.
We've needed a playoff for years. This is phenomenal. And hopefully it becomes 6 or 8 down the road, which I can have some patience.
Start somewhere.
Yeah, let's start somewhere. And this firestorm where people were angry at me and calling me names, etc. And it didn't start out that way at all. I just thought that we have a playoff system now. Let's play by the same rules.
Who's calling you names?
Oh, you can find them on Twitter. They're out there.
Yeah,
and I don't mean any offense to anybody out there, but for me, and once again, I mentioned it last year, coming from the NFL world, I was an NFL assistant for 9 years, and the system playoff is ingrained, which all the teams play by the same rules and scheduled by the same rules to work into this playoff system, so that one 11-1 record or 12-1 record means the same as another 12-1 record, where in college football, the way it is right now, not all 11-1s, 12-1s are the same.
Yeah, it's funny because, Bowlesby, the Big 12 commissioner, made those comments, and everyone immediately went to, he must be taking a shot at the SEC. As good as they've been, it's like, come on, and not everything is about you necessarily.
Absolutely, and I prefaced that comment, which got absolutely no play, by saying I give all the credit in the world to what Nick Saban's accomplished at Alabama, the success they've had at LSU, and the recent success at Auburn, et cetera. I think those guys have been phenomenal. But that's great. All that stuff is in the past. Now we're going forward in this playoff system. Let's all get on the same. And if we break away into this Big Five conference, which I think is great, now let's take the Big Five and let's all play by the same rules. I'm going to stick to my story, and I think it just makes common sense.
Come on, David. That doesn't fit into the narrative when you're writing a column or whatnot. That snippet is what they want. It's kind of like the snippet I saw on Twitter yesterday with you is we're not trying to build a team to be like the SEC. We're trying to build a team to be like the NFL. And that one got a lot of play, too.
Which, once again, for some reason gets taken as an offense or an affront to somebody else, which it really isn't. I'm a 9-year NFL assistant. I'm a son of an NFL coach.
Right.
This is the world that I was born in. My college football coaches were Denny Green, who's a longtime NFL coach, and Bill Walsh.
Yeah.
I have an NFL system in my head and in my mind and in my background. I spent 5 years with John Gruden. So for me, I'm doing what I want to do. I've never looked at Alabama film and said this is what I want to be, or LSU film and looked at what I want to be. And it's no offense to those because they've had a lot of success. But as far as me and my background and my coach's background, this is what we're good at.
David Shaw, Stanford coach, joining us here in studio in the Herd on ESPN Radio. Why does everyone want you back in the NFL? It seems like every time I'm reading, it's like somebody's like, oh, David Shaw needs to go to the NFL. I feel like you seem pretty happy where you're at.
I am extremely happy, and I really appreciate that and all that attention. I think that's great. I tell my players it's because of them. You know,
right.
It's part of our program where we've become that I personally get that attention. What I think a lot of people don't understand is Stanford is a destination job. Mm-hmm. I'm working with the best group of kids that you could possibly imagine. These are all great students, great kids, great football players. I'm on a campus, college campus, where things are being invented daily that are going to affect all of our lives in Silicon Valley. The perfect weather. My wife loves it there. My family loves it there. Kids love it there. So I don't know that there's a better situation out there.
How long does it take you to look back at the way the season ended? Like, some coaches, they need a week. Some coaches, they need a month. How long?
You know, I'm a son of a football coach, and when you dwell on the past, you don't live very long in this profession. So I think you take every win and every loss for what they're worth. I think you learn something from everything, and I think the big thing we learned really from all three of our losses this year, which is you're going to play against a tough schedule. We're going to play against, it'll be, again, this year, just like last year, we'll play against 7 or 8 ranked teams. That's just the way it's going to be. We're going to play in tight football games. 3 or 4 plays are going to determine the game. And you look at that Michigan State game, they're a fantastic football team. They made 3 plays that we didn't make. You look at the USC game that we lost. They made 3 plays that we didn't make. You look at our Utah loss. They made 3 plays we didn't make. So we played extremely well in those games. We played hard in those games, but it's going to come down to the end, and that's what we learned. We're in those games. You have to take advantage of your opportunities.
I don't consider myself old, though every day I feel older because now I'm in my mid-30s, but watching Barry Sanders Jr. play for you made me feel really, really old. How good can this kid be?
He can be special. He really can be. He's got a lot to learn. It's time for him to start getting some experience. He's learned a lot of football. I thought he had a really, really good spring session. He's going to be in a rotation. He's not going to be out there every single play. We're gonna spoon feed him to a certain degree, but there are things that he can do naturally. There are things that he sees that he should not see. He can get himself out of some trouble. There are probably 4 or 5 times during the course of spring where it should have been a 2-yard loss and ended up being a 4-yard gain. And those things sometimes don't make SportsCenter, but as a football coach, that makes you an efficient offense when you have a player that can turn a bad play into a positive.
Well,
play.
that's what his dad did, basically. I remember I used to do some stuff with Brian Cox in the media for years, and when I was at another network, and he said that the greatest running back he ever played against was Barry Sanders because he said, there was one time on one play I missed him 3 bleeping times, is what he said. And that to be able to be that elusive is an unbelievable gift.
Oh, there's no question. And those genes have been passed on, which I'm very excited about.
David Shaw, Stanford head coach, joining us here in studio in the Herd on ESPN Radio. Okay, biggest surprise for you as a head coach of a college football program? What was something you didn't expect that kind of was sprung on you?
You hear it said, but you don't know until you experience it. The fact that there will be times during a day where I'm not a football coach. There are times during the day I am an administrator. I am a mentor. I am an advice giver. I am a referee, or I am a judge and jury. There are times where I have 20 things on my list that I want to get done for the day, and I do 3 of them because things come in left and right. When something happens, something else happens, and something else happens, and I need to address all 3, and I get to the end of the day, and I haven't done anything that I set out to do. and it's understanding that you have to have a great staff. No one head coach is the entire deal. You have to have a great staff because you have to delegate. It's the only way anything gets done.
Tougher gig, having to deal with all the stuff about the SEC and the backlash and the back and forth, or being the son of a coach?
Yeah, gosh, being the son of a coach, all that other stuff is what it is. I laugh it off.
Yeah.
It holds absolutely no weight at all.
Yeah.
Being a son of a football coach with some things are just phenomenal. It's tough to not have Dad around. He missed a lot of my games growing up. He made it when he could. He gave me unbelievable advice. But all that has come full circle. Him being able to come to my games now, sit on the sidelines with me, sit on the bus with me when he decides to ride, because I ride the offensive bus. My dad's defense coordinator, so he doesn't ride the offensive bus. But just having my dad around with all the knowledge and experience that he has, and being able to give me just gems of knowledge here and there has been phenomenal.
Was your dad kind of like a hardline type guy, though? I would imagine as a football coach, like, you had to be that guy. Like, there has to be an experience where you were like, Dad, come on, are you serious? Like, I'm your son.
Oh, you're talking about the oldest of seven, combined with being a military man, combined with being a football coach.
Right.
There wasn't a lot of leeway growing up. We were given a lot of direction, and it wasn't always the coddling that sometimes happens nowadays. That we were given a lot of direction, and I appreciate it now. I think it's helped me be the man that I am.
Yeah, I'm with you. I always call my dad the Cuban Bobby Knight. Like, that's kind of what my deal was growing up. David Shaw, Stanford coach, joining us here in studio. Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, David Shaw with us here in the Herd on ESPN Radio. Coming up next, there's a reason I think that some guys in the NBA don't want to play with a couple of superstars. I'll tell you what that is next. George Sedano in for Colin. It's the Herd on ESPN Radio. The Herd on ESPN Radio and ESPNU. Presented by Progressive Insurance. Always hit us up on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. At the Herd for the show. At Sedano ESPN for myself. We'll get to some news on Chris Paul here in just a second. The Dodgers, though, they battle the Giants on Sunday Night Baseball. Coverage begins at 7 o'clock Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPNradio.com, and the ESPN Radio app. And don't forget, on the television side, it's 8 o'clock Eastern on ESPN TV and the Watch ESPN app. Before I get to Chris Paul and the latest on that and Donald Sterling and whatnot, there was a story that caught my attention earlier this week, and it was about James Harden and Dwight Howard. And it has to do with Chandler Parsons' departure. Now, I'm going to state this beforehand. I don't think Chandler Parsons is a $15 million player if I were a general manager, but I'm not, and that's what the market was for him, and he should absolutely take it. That is always my position on players and contracts and money. If they can give it to you, take it. It's just, in general, that's the deal. But I found it strange at the way Dwight Howard and James Harden reacted to Chandler Parsons' departure, because most times when a guy leaves a team, a good player, and Chandler Parsons is a good player, I'd say he's more than just a competent role player. It's a pretty good player. Very talented, can do a lot of different things, especially on the offensive end. Defense, whatever. But offensively, he's very talented. And when a guy leaves a team, usually the team leader, the superstar type guy, especially if it's not an acrimonious departure, it's usually like, hey, all right, good for him. We get it. We'll be okay. We'll survive, but happy for him. Stinks that he's not around. Usually some sort of variation of that, right? You acknowledge the guy did a good job for you, and then, you say, okay, we'll be good. Now, Dwight Howard had this response, quote, won't affect us at all on the loss of Parsons. I mean, really? Won't affect you at all? Look, Trevor Ariza is a better defender, but he also is a guy that doesn't play his best basketball until he's in a contract year. That's what history says. I think he'll be a good player on your team. He may be better than Chandler Parsons. On the defensive end, he is. On offense, So it's a give and take, but won't affect you at all. I mean, Chandler Parsons was a pretty important piece for them last year in their success. So I just think that's a bit of a stretch. It's a diss. There's no doubt. You can't say he didn't affect you at all or won't affect you at all. Now, James Harden, on the other hand, this was a little different, a little more subtle, I want to say. But he said, quote, Dwight and I are the cornerstones of the Rockets. The rest of the guys are role players or pieces that complete our team. We've lost some pieces and added some pieces. I think we'll be fine next season. Again, not as harsh as Dwight's by any stretch of the imagination. But I've heard for years, I talked about it on this show a couple of times that I've been on during the whole free agency saga, that guys around the league aren't big on Dwight. They're not big on playing on Dwight. And I've heard some rumblings that may be the case with Harden, too. Now, I don't know concretely that that's the case. I just heard that he's a different dude. And not everyone necessarily gets along with him. KD and Russ, they loved him. But it's not everybody's cup of tea. Dwight, on the other hand, I've heard during those Olympic experiences, kind of a loner. A little bit of a loner. Everyone was kind of hanging, doing their thing, LeBron, D. Wade, Chris Paul, Bosh, and Carmelo, and all those guys. And Dwight was kind of off to the side. Not like a Mean Girls situation. I know we were talking about movies earlier, where, Dwight is having lunch by himself, but wasn't always with the group. And it's why I always said LeBron would never, well, I don't want to say never, but I thought the chances were almost zero that he would go play with Dwight, because people were asking, well, why doesn't he just go play in Houston and play with Dwight and James Harden? That would be the best fit for him or anyone for that matter. There's a reason Melo didn't go there. There's a reason Bosh didn't go there. Bosh could have gone there and been a championship piece for that team. Didn't want to go there. A lot of it, from what I hear, has to do with guys don't vibe with Dwight. Chris Paul has come out recently and said that the boycott for the Los Angeles Clipper players is a real possibility. And he told ESPN.com that it's unacceptable if Donald Sterling is still the owner of the team when the season begins. I get it. It says here, that's something me and Doc are both talking about, Paul said on Thursday after coaching his AAU team. Something has to happen. Something needs to happen sooner rather than later. Look, there's a timeline here, man. It's in the court system. But I think the one thing that guys are missing out on is I don't think the league is going to let this go until October or whatever, when the season opens, or November 1st, or whenever the season opens. If Donald Sterling is still in court with the Clippers and the league and Ballmer and all that, the league will take his team, and it will be a league-run team until they can finish out that process. There's no way Donald Sterling is keeping this team. So when I see this stuff, like Chris Paul has to say that, and he should feel that way. The Doc Rivers thing has always been interesting to me because I can say that Chris Paul was young and didn't know about Donald Sterling's past as much and not as well versed because of youth or inexperience in that case. Doc Rivers, though, a little bit of Captain Easy stance there, right? Doc Rivers played for the Clippers, was traded there. That was the argument I got the other day when I brought this up on SVP and Russell. Well, he was traded there. Right, because that's going to change anything? He was still part of the culture. Like, he knew what Donald Sterling was all about. Still went there. Got out of Boston to go there. And I don't blame him. That's a great roster. I would want to coach them, too. But, again, a little Captain Easy stance there on Doc. But I don't think they're going to have anything to worry about. Like, this is all to do about nothing because Sterling won't be in power. Worst case scenario, it's going to be the league that's in charge. And I'll tell you this, I wouldn't work for Donald Sterling either. Honestly, if I were LeBron, I wouldn't have forgiven Dan Gilbert. That's just me. I would have gone anywhere else but played there. I am a little vindictive. I would never have worked for Donald Sterling. Like, I actually have a great Donald Sterling story that maybe I'll tell. I'm back on Tuesday, so maybe I'll tell the Donald Sterling story on Tuesday. It's actually a buddy of mine who introduced me to Donald Sterling. It was the strangest thing ever. Super Bowl party. It was odd. And maybe I should be careful and not say it. He's so litigious. Maybe I should keep that quiet. I'll run it by the suits first, see what they think. Anyway, coming up next, Rich Rodriguez, the coach of Arizona. Pac-12 Media Day continues here on campus at ESPN. I want to ask him why he's got beef with Saban, too. It's like the whole country has beef with Saban. We'll get into that next. George Sedano and for Colin. It's The Herd on ESPN Radio.
Life is full of...
The Herd on ESPN Radio and ESPNU. Presented by Progressive Insurance. All guests appear via the Subway Fresh Take hotline. In studio to give us his Subway Fresh Take, Arizona head coach Rich Rodriguez joining us here. This is like old hat for you. You've been here about a million times.
Been here a few times. It's been great every time, and it's a little further trip now for me, coming from the West Coast.
Yeah.
But we had a great trip. Had a good time with all the coaches flying out here and ready to roll.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I feel like all the other coaches from all the other conferences, you're getting questions about your conference, but everyone's like asking you and peppering you for SEC questions or, hey, did you hear this coach and said this, that, and the other?
Why is that? Yeah. I don't know. I think it's interesting. I don't mind talking about our, other coaches and other leagues as far as what my opinion is, but I think for the most part, we got a lot to talk about in the Pac-12. That's what the reason we're here. That I think we're at an all-time high in the Pac-12, and I've only been in the league 3 years, but pretty exciting times for our league, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm with you wholeheartedly, though. I guess the one big thing, and you talked about it at your media day, was the pace of play situation where Nick Saban was claiming that could have led to more injuries. I agree with you. I think it couldn't be any further from the truth, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I don't blame whether it's Coach Saban or Coach Bielema, whoever it was. I don't blame them for bringing the question up or looking at the rules because why defend it? If you can change the rule. And I don't know if people say, well, it wouldn't have affected the game that much anyway. Well, it affected a little bit, but the principle is, there's been no proof whatsoever that I have seen or any hard data that says pace of play has anything to do with injury. So thankfully that got put to the back burner and hopefully it won't be brought up again.
Yeah. You mentioned about the Pac-12 and just kind of keeping up with the Joneses. I know that you guys got new facilities. I feel like you guys all have to keep getting new facilities because Oregon is like, they're like a step ahead of everybody.
Yeah, I was thinking I said Oregon, they change it out like porta potties, every 3 years, they change it up, but they got the means to do that. So why not? I don't blame them. But the truth is everybody in college football, at least the ones that can do it, are looking at upgrading their facilities, and not just from a recruiting standpoint, but also for their current players to help their welfare, so to speak. So those are people that complain about student-athlete welfare. The money that's invested in facilities goes directly toward helping those student-athletes achieve success, so it's all good.
What do you make of where your program is at right now? I know that, look, you played at the highest levels when you were at West Virginia. You guys were a perennial power for a long time. Can Arizona get back to that level where they were? I mean, in the mid-'90s, they were one of the teams to beat.
Right, and we've had some really good football teams. Coach Tomey was there, and even when Mike Stoops was there, they had some good teams. But we've never been able to get over the top. And one of the reasons is probably because we didn't have a type of facility to help us there. Now we do. We moved into August, a brand new facility. It's fantastic. It's helping us with recruiting. It's helping with our current players. And we're in a spot in the league now where we're getting more exposure than ever before. The thing that we have to battle is our league is better too.
Yeah.
And not only are we improving, but so is everybody else that we're playing is improving. So we got to improve more than they improve. And I think we're going to do that. I got a great staff, and we've never been to the Rose Bowl. Been close, but we've never been there. But we're on the track to get there.
What's the biggest challenge at Arizona?
Oh, without question, it's just convincing guys to pay us a visit, because you got to. Sometimes Tucson's not right on the way to somewhere else, so you have to make a special trip to us. If they come on campus, our rate of signing guys or getting guys to commit when they visit campus is really, really high, because they go there and they see it's a beautiful campus, a great location, good town. But we got to convince them to give us a chance. Give us a chance, see our facility. It's a new University of Arizona football program, and I hope if they give us a chance to come on campus, they're going to love it.
You've been around, obviously, for a number of years, and we talked about that earlier. What's the one thing, like when I go back to young Rich Rodriguez, right, getting ready, first head coaching gig, what was something that you had in your head then that you thought college football was all about, and now, many years later, as a grizzled veteran head coach, you think, man, what was I thinking back then?
Well,
nothing like this.
You got to remember, I was the youngest head coach in the country when I was 24 years old, and the youngest fired when I was 25. When they dropped, when the school got bought and they dropped football. So I've got a lot of experiences. And back then I didn't know what the heck I was doing, and a lot of people say I still don't. But at least I've tried to learn over 20-some years as a head coach that every year there's experiences that will make you better. Mm-hmm. And just like we want our players to be better, I think our coaches need to get better every year, and I've been able to do that. But I've been around a lot of great people, particularly as coaching staff. I've got a great coaching staff, and we've all kind of grown up together and learned together. And you got to learn, every year there's going to be things that happen that maybe be new to you. Thankfully for me, there hasn't been too many of that because I have so much experience with it. But you got to enjoy what you're doing. I don't think I probably appreciated the opportunities I had earlier in my career because you're just grinding and you're just trying to win and have success and do all that. But now I'm not saying I'm reflective, but I think I'm more appreciative of the opportunity I had to coach and really enjoying it.
If you could do a do-over, what would it be?
Well, every year. I mean, I'm still calling plays, so there's every game I'd like to do over a whole lot of plays, especially the ones that didn't work, right?
Yeah.
But are there regrets? Sure, there's certain regrets. When I left West Virginia, I have a few regrets that I didn't have a press conference and explain why. There were regrets at Michigan, even though not as many as maybe people think. I just didn't have an opportunity to finish the deal there.
Mm-hmm.
But I really haven't had a whole lot of regrets as far as how I've coached or how I've interacted with the kids, because I've enjoyed it every step of the way, and I enjoy hearing back from the guys that maybe I coached 20 years ago from Glenville State or 15 years ago from West Virginia.
Last thing here, we only got about a minute. You look at Arizona and you say this year the goal is what?
It's funny, and I'll answer quickly. I'm not one that's big on setting goals, number of wins, this and that. I want our guys to be more in the moment, I guess, follow the process, as Coach Saban would say. What are you going to do to get better today, or the next 5 minutes, or the next play? But I want us to get better as a program, all across the board, recruiting, coaching, strength and conditioning wise, playing wise, wins, and all that stuff. And if we get better as a program each and every year, we'll eventually get to the point where we're competing for championships.
Rich Rodriguez, head coach at Arizona. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you.
All right, Coach. Appreciate it. All right. There you go. Look at that. Pac-12 is in the house. They got a long flight back, though. Man, good Lord. Those guys, they got it nice, though. Weather's much nicer in Arizona, much nicer in California for David Shaw. It's nice here right now. January, February, I'd probably want to go to the Pac-12, too. Maybe I should take a visit. Go watch an Arizona game this fall when it's nice and cold here in Bristol. All right, that'll do it for us. I want to thank Rich Rodriguez. I want to thank David Shaw, Levitard Stugotz, Mark Stein, everyone who stopped by, Teddy Bruschi. That'll do it for me. Colin will be back on Monday. You guys have a great weekend. It's The Herd on ESPN Radio. Sure.